Welcome back to the next chapter, Activity-Based Costing, Chapter 5. In this chapter, you are expected to be able to explain how activity-based costing works and how to apply the calculation of activity-based costing in determining product costs per unit. Again, our aim is to calculate product costs. So roughly, product cost consists of direct material, direct labor, direct expenses, plus manufacturing overhead. And the manufacturing overhead is where the activity-based costing will apply. Let's go a little bit back into the history of ABC, activity-based costing. Activity-based costing has been introduced since end of 1970s. So it's actually not a new theory, but in 1970s it has been invented by Professor Robert Kaplan and Professor Robin Cooper. Previously, all company and business apply traditional costing. Activity-based costing. Activity-based costing is an approach for allocating overhead costs based on activity rather than cost center. Cost center here means department. So instead of looking at the cost allocated per department as we have done in the previous topic, so we are looking zoom in into the activities that cause the incurred of the cost. So an activity, when we talk about activity, activity is an event that incur costs. So cost driver is any factors that make or activities that has a direct cause and effect relationship with the resources consumed. So let's look at the differences between ABC costing and traditional costing. What is the difference between the methods that we calculate our overhead costs previously and using activity-based costing in this chapter? Okay, first differences is traditional costing usually will use one plant-wide overhead rate. For example, okay, in the factory, they will use single or maximum to 2 or 3 of cost driver. For example, the cost is calculated based on the direct labor hour. So that is one example. Whereas activity-based costing, since we incur a lot of activities in a factory they will use multiple activity rates. So each activity we will calculate overhead absorption rate. Okay, second differences is in terms of the complexity. Traditional costings, it seems to be simple, easy to implement, not much to calculate. Whereas under activity-based costing, for each cost center itself, there is a multiple complex of activities. So we have to identify what kind of activities incur in factory, and then we have to calculate overhead absorption rate for each cost driver. The third one is accumulation of costs. So accumulation of cost is accumulated in cost center. If you can recall back what you have learned under the math lecture previous chapter, traditional or overhead costs, all the costs will be allocated based on department. First, you allocate to both production and services department, and afterwards you will allocate, reapportion servicing department to the production department. Okay, so that is in terms of accumulation of costs. Whereas in activity-based costing, all the costs will be pulled in together based on cost driver. What kind of driver drives to the incurred of the cost will be accumulated. All the costs will be accumulated together, and we call it as cost pool. And lastly, the comparison between activity-based costing and traditional costing is traditional costing will be less accurate, whereas activity-based costing will be more accurate, since it is zoom in, look down detail at what kind of activity incurred the cost. Since we do so, the calculation or the calculation will be more accurate. Right. So simple. Activity-based costing and traditional costing purpose or aims is same. It is in order to calculate the overhead cost which will become part of the product cost. So let's take a look at what are the steps in order to calculate activity-based costing. First, we have to determine the overhead cost drivers. Cost drivers. The keyword here is cost drivers. Why? Because cost drivers is the factor that make costs to incur. So first step, identify cost drivers. Okay, this step will be very, very critical, very, very detailed and complex. Since businesses is very big, very broad, very complex, the activity very dynamic. Okay, so first complexity here is to determine the cost drivers. Second, activity cost pool are created, okay, where all the costs which incur due to same factors will be lump sum in together. We call it as cost pool. We call it as cost pool. An activity cost pool is a pool of individual costs that all have the same cost pool, right? Now, the third step is all overhead costs are then allocated to one of the activity. Okay, next. Then overhead rate is calculated for each cost pool. OAR, overhead rate means OAR. Okay, so still remember our formula to calculate OAR. It is cost divided by basis. Okay, of course the basis here will be the cost driver. And lastly, overhead costs are then allocated to each product according to how much of each product use the basis. Right. Probably you may feel it is you cannot imagine how it works yet, but it's okay. Let's look at the calculation afterwards and it will be more clearer. Okay. So in here we have a list of cost pool. This is cost, and this is list of cost pool. So, first of all, let's map each of these costs to the cost pool. Which one belong to which pool? So, let's start from the first one. Okay, you do it together with me, yeah? Alright. Payroll tax. Payroll relates to the worker. So, payroll tax will go to direct labor. Machine maintenance is about machine. So, it will go to machine hours. Purchasing department or labor, purchasing department labor, but even though it is labor, but it is relates to purchase. So it will go to purchase. Fringe benefits. Fringe benefits is refers to benefit in kind where they provide to the worker. So it will go to direct labor. Purchasing department supplies. So purchasing again. So they will go to purchase order. Equipment depreciation is related to the machine. Electricity. Okay. Let me think for a while. Electricity, probably it relates to machine hour. And lastly, unemployment insurance. It is belong to direct labor. Alright. So we have map. Okay, let's look at the next part. Well, once we already map it, what we're gonna do, we just add all the total as follows. So we have under direct labor for 4,500, under machine hour 2,500, under number of purchase order we have 4,250. Right? So next, an overhead rate is then calculated for each cost pool. Okay, overhead rate we have covered previously as well. This overhead rate means OAR. OAR is overhead absorption rate. So the formula is cost divided by basis. Okay, cost usually expressed in RM or dollar. Base, it depends, it is based on whatever basis units. Okay, all right. So let's assume the following basis. So usually the basis will be given by the question. So direct labor hours, total direct labor hours is 1,000. So this is relates to direct labor. Machine hours 250 hours. It's related to machine hours. And then purchase order 100 orders. It is related to number of purchase order. So how we calculate this? We take the dollar RM dollar 4,500 divide by 1,000. You get $4.50. We will get $4.50. How we get that? Cost. This is cost divide by total labor hours. Second, machine hour. $2,500 divided by 250 hours. You get $10 per machine hour. Okay, so what does it mean? It means each machine hour used, you will charge $10. Each direct labor hour used, you will charge $4.50. And the last one, $4,250 divided by 100 order. You will get one order. You will charge $42.50. Alright. Okay. Overhead costs are then allocated to each product according to how much each base the product uses. So using the ABC rates, the one that we calculate just now, we will calculate for widget AB. Widget A and B is the product A. This one widget B, it will be product B. Okay, let's say widget A use direct labor hour 400, machine hour 100, purchase order 50. So simple, how we gonna calculate? We will times direct labor hour 400, right? So we charge 4 ringgit and $50 for each labor hour. So we will times with 4 ringgit 50 cent and we will calculate how much. For machine hour also, you will times with $10 and how much? 50 here, purchase order, you will times with $42.50 and you will get how much? So let's look at the next slide. Yeah, for base A, direct labor hour $4 times 4 ringgit and 50 cent, you'll get 1,800. In this case, 400 hours used to make widget A is multiplied by the rate of $4.50. This gives total overhead applied for this activity cost pool of $1,800 to widget A. So we will do for the same for all the basis or all the cost driver. You will get total widget A absorb $4,925. Okay, you can also calculate for widget B. Do the same. 600 times 4 ringgit, $4.50. 150 times $10. 50 times 42.5. So you will get total widget B 6325. Okay. The original overhead to be applied was 4,500 for direct labor driven overhead plus 2,500 machine hour driven overhead and plus 4,250 of the purchase order driven overhead. So total is 11,250 total overhead to apply. 11,250 here should tally back with the question. Actual overhead allocated was 4,925 for widget A plus 6,325 for widget B. It should total 11,250. Okay. Okay, why we have to apply ABC? Because traditional method is less accurate. Why is it less accurate? If we had allocate the overhead in this company using traditional costing, okay, we will assume usually traditional costing will use one factor only, for example, direct labor hour. So what will be the amount allocated to each product? It will be like this. Okay, you see this, all of these are the general ledger. If they use one cost driver only, which is direct labor hour, so 400 and 600 only they will take. So 1,000, 11,250 they divide by direct labor hour 1,000, you will get 11.25. Then you times with the amount 400 and 600. So the amount that you will get is different, and we can say that ABC is more accurate. Yes. Right. Now it's the time for tasks. So simple. You just go to individual assignment Annex 5. Look at question 4. You will see the title Producing Number Height. So what you're going to do, you just go to your own individual assignment file. Click 5.2. Answer the 5 question here in the section. under 5.2. Alright. So first question is identify total overhead costs. Which one is total overhead costs? Number 2, which one is cost driver? And what will be the cost driver used for traditional costing method? Read the question and you will see the answer there. And then for third question, the fourth question is how many units produced for each product? And lastly, how much is the prime cost for each product? Alright, so that's all and see you in tutorial class. Bye bye.